Good morning. Good morning, Dr. Draz. How you doing?
Good, Keith. How are you? It's great to be here.
Good. I feel blessed today to have you on the show. Rick was telling me a few weeks ago, he's like, you need to get some of your friends on the show. And, I can take a week off because they have more to share than I do.
I
uh,
don't
so,
know. I don't know about that.
so, we've only had like a few guests, I think Tim may have been it. So to have you, be here today. So my gratitude list, my friend. How you doing?
Doing well, thanks. Yeah, I'm very honored to be here. I look forward to these casts every day, and as you know, and it's kind of like the shoe is on the other foot now, so it's a different experience altogether.
Oh man, it's so great. You and I've had conversations over the years, and just to give a little background before we get started with our show topic, is that I remember first of all, before I met you, everyone was like, you got to meet Dr. Chakowski. I meet Dr. Chakowski. He's so kind. He's this. And then I met someone who we both know in common, and they were talking about how your care had really made a difference with them. And so they were just like, oh, he's the best person. I had this thing that I was dealing with, and I've gone to all these other places and no one would acknowledge it. And he was just so compassionate as well as skilled. And so I couldn't wait to meet you. And then there I met you, set a little appointment, met you, stopped by your office in the med school, and I shared a couple of my ideas, and you liked the ideas, and then you gave me a tip during at the very beginning. I don't know if you remember this, but this tip has stayed with me in my whole career at Mayo. And what you said was, Keith, fantastic idea. And you just said, have you talked to the students about it? She's like, you said it's better. You said it's better if it comes from them. And you taught me the importance of making sure that your stakeholders are your partners.
Yeah.
And to treat them that way. And that is something that has been a part of my formula in building relationships. And I just want to thank you for that wisdom.
Oh, I remember the meeting very vividly. It was one of those life-changing meetings for me as well. I mean, your energy and, just your enthusiasm was infectious. So thank you.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you. And then, just give the audience a little bit of background too. You like motorcycles.
Welcome to my humble office.
Look at those helmets up there. I mean, and you're not riding around on cruisers.
I got a little bit of everything.
Yeah. So for people out there who may have an appreciation for motorcycles, give us the range of kind of motorcycles in the sport that you enjoy.
Yeah, I grew up on motorbikes out when we were kids. We couldn't afford horses or anything like this. We lived in the middle of nowhere. And my old man told me once, he says, if you guys can pay for it, I'll let you ride it. And I thought, wow, how permissive was that when we were 9 and 10 years old? And it was like, we're out riding little Hondas in the middle of the North Phoenix desert. And it was just since then, ever since then, my brother and I, who's my best friend, we ride. I've ridden all over the country. I've literally ridden in like 48 states. I haven't been to Rhode Island because I'm not sure I want to go that far to ride in that little punky state. But but my point is it's a lifestyle for me. I've had motorbikes all my life except for in medical school. I couldn't afford it. I was very destitute in medical school, and couldn't afford it. But when I got back out of fellowship and started making a little money, I said, okay, I'm getting back into it. And it really is it's a part of my life. It's kind of like you working out. Motorbikes are part of my life like that. If I'm not thinking about it, I'm planning the next ride about it. So
yeah. So it is in terms of like supporting well-being. Mm-hmm. And we're going to do, like, the topic of our show today is really about like spirituality and that can include religion. And stuff like that. And people will have different takes on it. And we can get into that in just a second. But I think listeners will be surprised by what we both have to share, which I haven't heard your thoughts about it, and you don't know mine. So it's going to be interesting. We'll go along for the ride. But how is being on a motorcycle and being, out in nature in on that form, is that also part of that supports well-being?
Yeah, it does. Many people talk about it in those terms. When you're riding, you have to focus all your senses. You have to focus. You have to be a part. You have to be so present. And when we talk about, when you and Rick and others talk about being present in the podcast, I can't think of a better way to do that for me personally. We when you're out on the bike, you have to really focus. Every sense has to be on par. You have to pay attention. You have to be aware of your surroundings. And that part of it is a big relaxer for me. I got to be honest with you. We enjoy the sensations. I kind of equate it like this. You can be in a car, you can be in other forms of transportation. You look out a window, you're kind of looking at a picture of something. It's very similar to photographs. But when you're on the bike, you feel it, you hear it, you sense it. You have the G forces. It's just one of those, how should I say, enlightening experiences for many of us.
Oh, wow. So it's like, if we take your analogy with the car, with the car being inside, in a lot of ways, especially if you're not the driver, you're really the observer, right? And then you're an active participant, in the experience when you're on a motorcycle.
Yes. And it's one of those beautiful things where people can share the experience. And unless you've done it, it's like being in a club. One of the aspects I dearly love about it is it cuts across all socioeconomic status and stratospheres. And if you're in the club, if you have a bike, that's what you talk about. I've ridden with billionaires and paupers, and we're all the same. I've ridden with all religions, backgrounds, everything. And if you have that commonality about the bikes, that's what it's all about. People, they say they have it and they get it.
Right. That's awesome. That's awesome. I love that. And then we need a lot more motorcyclists in the world.
Well, you'd be surprised. It's really funny. We work in a common institution, and at that institution, there's the underground, if you will. There's an underground of people that you would not believe who rides some of these two-wheeled pleasure machines. You would not believe it. And we kind of keep it kind of quiet. Everybody has that as their little secret thing going on. And when you stop them in the hall, you kind of give them the nod. I don't know, Keith, have you ever noticed when you're behind somebody on a motorbike, it happens about 85-90% of the time. If one motorbiker crosses paths with another motorbike on the road, they'll often wave at them.
Oh, wow. I need to notice that now. That's cool. That's way cool.
I taught my son-in-law to ride. And the first time that happened to him, we're on a communicator, we're talking back and forth between our helmets. And he goes, "Hey, I got my first wave." And I
go, "That's cool. That's way cool. That's awesome." Well, thank you for sharing that little bit of joy and with the listeners. Let's hop right into it. So again, this topic is about, spirituality or religion. So when you think of that, Dr. Draz, what can you share a little bit of your experience and your thoughts about it?
Yeah, I mean, we all have such an individual approach to this, but in my world, in healthcare, and in my own personal life, it's been so paramount. It's been so important. Religion and spirituality means different things to different people, and I'm not here to promote. And these opinions are truly my own. I'm not here to promote or suggest, maybe, but what I suggest a particular religion or particular activity. But I'm reminded about 10 years ago, I really looked into this subject. There was a meta-analysis done by a physician, and he looked at all the research done in healthcare on the topic of religion and spirituality. And they looked at the different aspects, from everything from cardiovascular health to cancer to mental health, and very, very much analyzed like hundreds of papers. And the conclusion is that it's hard to study, but in the most part, it can be very helpful for your health or your overall health. Such things as well-being and happiness, optimizing life, gratefulness, those kind of things. They also looked at any negative aspects that may be part of this particular topic, such as depression and suicidality and anxiety, psychosis, and all that. So they looked at any aspect of health that was involved in this, that people have studied with regard to this topic. And Dr. Koenig said basically, overall it's a positive thing, but it's got to be in the right setting. You have to individualize that. So everybody has to figure out what that means for them. So, for me, I grew up in a traditional religious family, and we were very dirt poor. And it was helpful for us to get grounding in morals and principles. Do I still do it? Yeah, I'm still practiced to some degree, but I also have a lot of personal things that I consider spirituality that are part of my life as well. Motorcycling being one of them. I consider that a spiritual kind of experience when it's right, so it's very helpful. If you look back in time, religion and medicine have been connected at the hip since 1500s. Many of the even before recorded time, many of the MDs and caregivers and were actually clergy back in the day. So many of the great institutions in our country that are providing healthcare to us, for example, in Phoenix, there's a hospital, St. Joseph's Hospital, 100 years ago. The Sisters of Mercy founded this wonderful institution and still around today. Their core values and principles of taking care of people were so important. Keith, I don't know if you know this, but Mayo was founded on a religious thing as well. So the good works that come out of that are very, very important to society and have been over the years. The studies originally, that wanted to connect healthcare, that were done in the modern times, were really about mental health and mental health and religion, but it goes beyond that. People have studied, lots of different topics on that. Long-winded answer for kind of a short question.
No, that's perfect. There are a couple of things that come to mind regarding the medicine aspect of it. I was talking to, and I think you know him. You know Dr. Edward Cragen? Do you know him?
No, I don't. No.
So he's in Rochester. He's a professor emeritus now. But he and I did a podcast a while back, and he was the first certified palliative care doctor for Mayo Clinic, and so he's been doing medicine over 40 years. He's an incredible, guy, inspiration. And he was telling me, being in palliative care and hospice care, he's seen people near end of life. And he says that when people get to that stage, they're not asking about, how much money is in the bank, or, about what I could have done in terms of working more or this or that. He said they're reaching out for something spiritual in that moment. Like he's like, I don't care what they were like before, whether they were agnostic or what their religion was before, they're reaching out for something spiritual in that moment. And that really struck me about that. In my own, has that been your experience?
It has, Keith. And I have flashes of memory. My very first job right out of high school, I was an EEG tech, and for those of you that don't know what that is, electroencephalogram. And part of my job when I was 19, I did my first brain death determination, and it was a very moving experience. But when I was exposed to that, I thought about it every time we had to do those evaluations and examinations. I had to do it clinically as well on many patients over the years. And what you just told us is absolutely correct. People towards that and their families towards that, they don't do the thing about more money. They don't say on the headstone, I wanted to work another day. They wanted to be spiritual, and they wanted that connection. It was so important to them. Yeah. I'll go on to say that people this is kind of off topic, but I'm just going to mention it because I think it is so interesting. People that have had come back from near-death experience that have been resuscitated, almost to a person, say they're not afraid of death anymore. It's an amazing phenomenon. So
yeah, and in my own life experience too, I've had a journey with religion, and in a lot of ways I kind of, if there's a distinction between the two, I confuse them. And so I grew up very much like you did in a very religious home, in the household, and we were lower middle class, I would say. And I just remember being very, very much aligned with what I was hearing from the pulpit or from the altar. And it really, I guess, introduced me to the Christian religion. I was Southern Baptist. And it also, in a lot of ways, it taught me what not to do. As I got older in the faith, and I started learning about, as an African American male, history and stuff like that, I started to become aware of that, some of the judgments that came with at least that I saw. I'm not saying the religion did this, but I saw the people in my community or people on television. I almost saw this kind of, judging a lot of people or justification for treating people very poorly, particularly in the African American community. That, you look back at slavery, religion was used in a way that, held people back. That became justification for inhumane treatment of people.
Right.
So that really started to turn me off. And then I also made the grave mistake of, holding the religion at fault or responsible for people's behavior. Like, hey, this person is saying this in the pulpit, but here's how they're treating people. Like my stepfather was a minister. So I would see him in the pulpit on Sunday giving blessings and prayer. And then I would see the way that he would carry on during the rest of the week, but the way he treated us. And, he struggled with alcoholism. And so for me, I saw this contradiction. So it was very hard for me. And then when I went out so I kind of walked away from it. And I really, I don't know, I hadn't learned, I didn't have enough life experience, and I really closed my heart to the point to where if someone almost mentioned it, I'd automatically create a narrative about the person, and I would shut down. I would close my heart to them. Yeah. And then when I went as a Marine, I went to the Middle East during Operation Desert Storm in the early 90s. And I was stationed there. My mom, who had also she went on a different path. And so we grew up very religious, never missing church on Sunday. We were doing something that was religious oriented, whether it was visiting the sick and the elderly, prayer meetings and things like that, choir rehearsal, Bible study. 6 days a week, we were at church growing up. And then when my parents got divorced, my mom went a different path. She still was influenced by and held true to a lot of the teachings. And so that influenced her values. So she was still a kind person, still served in the community and did all those things. But she walked away from the formal part of religion. And so when I was in Desert Storm, she started sending me letters. And we're talking about maybe a 5-year break from this. She would send me letters in Desert Storm. And the letters at the end would say something like, God bless you, or it would say, had a religious verse on it. And it perplexed me. I'm like, all of a sudden, she's back religious again. And, I don't know, is she afraid I'm going to die? And now she's religious. What's going on? Right. So fast forward, this went on, and I never asked her about it until I started doing the practice. And she would send me text messages, and it'd be like a Bible verse there. And she said to me, I was like, I've been meaning to ask you this for 20 years. What's going on with the religion all of a sudden? And she looked, and we were on the phone. And I even though she was saying this to me and I couldn't see her, in my mind's eye, I was seeing her. She was looking at me and she was saying to me, Keith, no matter what the source is truth. And I was like, wow. And in that moment, all these limits and barriers that I had about religion and stuff like that, I let them all go. And I'm like, if they lead you toward a spiritual path, because all the different religions, they all point to the same direction, and what I've learned is it's the way human beings, not to confuse human beings' behavior or even their use of religion to justify their behavior as the same thing, because they're not. You have the teaching, and then you have what people do with the teaching. Some people use it in a way that is aligned with being your best self, that's aligned with being with honoring and contributing to humanity, all of humanity. And there's some people who don't, but don't confuse that. And right. So that was really great for me when she said, truth is truth, and it all leads to the same destination. In that moment, I let go of those limits and barriers that my narratives had created. And I was able to see people. So if someone comes up and they lead with, hey, my faith informs me, I'm like, oh, great, I'm happy for it. If somebody else comes up and says, hey, my life experiences have led me to be this kind of person that gives to others. Hey, come on in, there's more room into this tent for you. And I just started welcoming everybody, because no matter what the source is or what the reason is, if it's pointing you on that path in that direction, hey, my heart is open. It's open to everybody, but hey, let's rock together.
Yeah, I believe that's the enlightened way to view this. And, some of us get there early, some of us never get there. Some of us are there, intermittently. And right. What I would say is, in general, it's been a positive influence on, my journey. I've shared with you my recent journey with some health challenges that I've had.
Yes.
And it those inner principles, those core principles, those teachings, as you say, relying on that was super helpful for me personally and my family, and in times of goodness and in times of struggle. So, that smooth,
Yes.
non-judgmental aspect of things is good. It's always about the person. That was so well expressed. That's all I can say.
Thank you, Dr. Draz. Yeah, it's been great, and the reason that I wanted to talk about this topic is one, you suggested that, whether Rick and I cover it, and I said, why don't we cover it?
Okay.
And then, and also, one of my colleagues asked me about the Stress-Free Living book because it got to the section on higher meaning. And so they text me and said, hey, listen, is this about to get really preachy, and stuff like that? Because I don't want to be preached at. I'm like, no, it's not that at all. And it's something completely different, and what I found is people that are really on the path, no matter what's motivating them to be on the path, if it's something that's an organized religious faith, or if it's their life experiences, or if they've, being inspired by Eckhart Tolle or some of the other people, whoever it may be, that, whatever that source may be, it can still lead you to the same destination, which is inner peace, so that you can be a contribution and serve others. And I was just telling her that, no, the book is not like that. It's really about higher meaning. And I think, whatever your source is that's inspiring you, it can also help you stay aligned with, be aware of what your higher purpose is, or define it, and then stay true to it along the way. And what's common about all of when people are taking and using those teachings in the manner that, at least I think they were created, is their contribution to everybody, their contribution to others. They're not exclusive, and it's free of judgment. If somebody makes a choice that, they don't think is the right choice, they can still keep an open heart, to everybody. So what are your thoughts, Dr. Draz?
I agree. And, you started out with inner peace, and I thought about this topic last night as, I was sitting in my easy chair, relaxing from the long week at the clinic. And the first thing I thought about, I wrote it down, actually, was inner peace. And, those activities, and if this provides you with this, it's one of the goals, sitting with love, connection with other people, strength, comfort. Those are all very positive things one can get from this. And how that intersects with my world is when I talk to patients is that I'm very comfortable bringing it up. If they don't want to talk about it, they don't. But you'd be surprised how many people want to talk about it, and the rich connections that I make with many of my patients and friends and family when we discuss it, just on a kind of a level like we're talking now. But the goals would be those things, would be the inner peace. And when I hear the practice, you and I know that I've done this for a while now.
Yes.
And it's been that kind of thing. So whatever activity it may be, if you're in a religious thing, or the motorbiking or working out or whatever it is, and if it provides you with that, use it for that in a non-judgmental way. I think that has made such a huge difference in my life personally. So.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, I'm just, I want to ask you one more question too, and this is related to, your professional life. How do you, what's different about the way that you handle conversations? Is there any difference with, now that you've been doing the practice well over a year, it's probably like a year and a half now, that you and I have been, like, we're in daily contact. How has that, or your spirituality, making that the main or the core of how you go about living your life, how has that informed how you move through life, both at the clinic and outside of life?
Well, it's made me calmer. I've that non-judgmental aspect of things, and the grounding in what I need to do, and my dedication has just been even further strengthened. I've always been a disciplined person in certain aspects, and I've always taken care of my patients. But this has accentuated that. This has made it much more rich, and there's been better connections with my coworkers, and I don't get as excited as I used to get. How could you say that? What did you do? Yeah, that kind of thing. And that less judgmental aspect of things has made for a lot of peace in my life. And we've found a formula. You find a formula, and once that works for you, you stick with it. And that would be one of the key points, takeaways from today would be find whatever that is, right? And figure out what it is for you in your personal life and work it. Just do it. If, for example, if I don't do some form of exercise every day, like this morning I was up I did 30 minutes of step. I wanted to do an hour, but I had a little late rise, and we're doing the podcast. And so after this program, I'm going to go walk for another 2 or 3 miles and get out in the sunshine and be a part of that. And if I don't do that, I can feel the difference. I can feel the difference. So.
Yeah, it's been amazing. I mean, your commitment, which is, on the spiritual path that you're on, it's been tremendous. I mean, you don't miss a day. I mean, like you're texting me like, hey, long day of call, I got it in, or like if you are waiting for something at test, you're like, I got out for 30 minutes, I got to wait again. You back out for 30 minutes walking around the campus. And so you're just taking it in. Last question, how has being on this path, how has it been a gift to other people in your life, your loved ones?
What it's done for me with my healthcare challenges that I had, there was a lot of worry and anxiety within my immediate family about what was going to happen to me over the next year. They're much more comfortable with that. They see the positive aspects of my journey from where I was with my illness to where I am now. So they're much more relaxed, much happier. And frankly, I'm less anxious and nervous. It's still there about, healthcare and worries, that kind of thing. But this has settled that down. And when times get tough, when you're up 24 hours with being on call, 2 years ago, never would have been able to do that, given what's happened now. So thank you for that. I mean, I'm here to testify on that part of it at least.
Wow, that's great. Well, Dr. Draz, thank you for a great show. I appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Can I make a comment at the end?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. So I'd like to consider 3 things. Consider doing something that fits you in a spiritual or religious realm. Everybody's different. Just consider doing it. Think about the daily practice, like I just talked about. Think about doing something on a daily basis. I've learned to meditate, and that's been super helpful too. 10 years ago, I'd have said, I don't want to do that. I'd also like you to take care of yourself, especially the men in the group. You need your regular health care. You need to get regular checkups, and just for you to be the best person you can be, you need to be as healthy as you can. So I just implore you to go get checked once in a while, at least once a year. How about that?
Wow. Thank you, Dr. Draz. I appreciate you, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. It's been a joy.